Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 287, Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya is this Saturday, and this card is just stacked with amazing matchups. And there is a fight on the main card that is being massively overlooked. That is the featured fight on the main card, Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for this fight. And UFC 287 is just so stacked. Nobody's even talking about this fight. And I've already done a bunch of UFC 287 prediction videos, including Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal, as well as Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya 2. I will link my entire UFC 287 playlist down in the description if you want to go check out any of those videos after this. But this is a fight that I'm really looking forward to for so many reasons. First off, stylistically, no matter who wins this fight, whether it's Rob Font or Adrian Yanez, this should be a fan-friendly matchup, an exciting fight. And also, it's got a very interesting story because Adrian Yanez has looked incredible, but he hasn't really fought anybody of note yet. And this is a massive step up in competition against Rob Font, who is on a skid, on the decline, getting up there in age, but we don't really know where Yanez's skills are at just yet because of the level of competition he's faced. We know where Rob Font is. So if Yanez can go out there and get a big win over Font at UFC 287 on a massive card, that's going to propel him into the top 10 of the bantamweight division, which in my opinion is the best division in all of the UFC. And for Rob Font, he's 35 years old. If he loses to an up-and-coming killer like Adrian Yanez, it's probably, not looking too bright for him in the future in the bantamweight division because he's just so talent rich. So it's a very interesting fight. I think it will be a very exciting matchup. I think both guys are elite strikers, but I can't wait to see how does Adrian Yanez match up against a guy like Rob Font, who's been around for a while, who's fought the who's who of the bantamweight division. So I'm really looking forward to this matchup. If you look at the tail of the tape, you have Rob Font, who's 19-6. Adrian Yanez is 16-3. Font is ranked number 6. Yanez is ranked number 12 in the UFC official rankings. Font is 35. Yanez is 29. Font is 5'8". Yanez is 5'7". Font has a 71.5-inch reach, and Yanez has a 70-inch reach. So a 1-inch height advantage and a 1.5-inch reach advantage for Rob Font. If you look at Adrian Yanez, he has 16 pro MMA wins, 10 by knockout, 2 by submission, 4 by decision. Of his 3 losses, he's lost all 3 via decision. But his last loss came all the way back in November of 2018. He was a completely different fighter. And he lost to Miles John by split decision, who is actually a current UFC fighter. So not terrible, and he was a completely different fighter. That was 5 years ago, which is insane to me that it's even 2023. His last fight was against Tony Kelly in June of last year, and he went out there and absolutely slaughtered him and TKO'd him in the first round. Tony Kelly was complaining it was an early stoppage. It was a late stoppage, if anything. But what does this fight really mean? I mean, Yanez was looking really good. He was lighting him up with big shots. He showed killer instinct in this fight. But Tony Kelly's basically a trash can. He's no longer in the UFC. He's not a very good fighter. And Yanez went out there and just lit him up and did what he was supposed to do and finish him in the first round. The opponent before that was in November of 2021 against Davey Grant. He won via split decision. It probably should have been a unanimous decision. He landed the better shots, was out striking Davey Grant. Davey Grant tried to mix in the grappling. Davey Grant had some moments in this fight, but Yanez was just a little bit quicker, had a little bit more technical striking, was pumping the jab, was just bloodying up Davey Grant and just beating him up in the striking. And, I think Davey Grant is the best opponent that Yanez has fought to this date. And I think Rob Font is just such a massive step up in competition compared to Davey Grant. Then the fight before that, he fought Randy Costa back in July of 2021. And people forget about this fight because Yanez got a highlight reel TKO in the second round. The first round, he was getting slaughtered. Randy Costa was just pumping the jab, beating him up with straight right hands, just lighting him up on the feet. And it looked like maybe, Randy Costa was on the way to a TKO of Yanez in the first round. But then he got a little bit tired, and then Yanez was able to capitalize, beat him up. Nasty combination in the second round, ripping to the body, ripping to the head. Costa went down to a knee, and then the ref kept telling him to fight back. He did not move. I think it was the body shot that hurt him badly, but Yanez is just known for just ripping hooks to the body, and he beat Randy Costa. And, he didn't look particularly good in that first round. Randy Costa's no longer even in the UFC. And then the fight before that was against Gustavo Lopez. KO'd him in the third round. Looked okay up until that point. Nothing particularly spectacular in this fight. And again, the level of competition isn't great. And he came off of Dana White's Contender Series back in August of 2020. And every single fight that he's been in the UFC, except the fight against Davey Grant, he has won via KO or TKO. So if you look at Rob Font, he has 19 pro MMA wins, 8 by knockout, 4 by submission, 7 by decision. He has 6 losses, 0 by knockout, 1 by submission, and 5 by decision. He comes into this fight on a 2-fight losing streak. His last fight was against Marlon Chito Vera back in April of last year, so he's took significant time off. Almost a full year off between fights, and honestly, he needed it because he took a beating in the Marlon Vera fight, which is actually super deceptive because you had a fight where Rob Font, it was a 25-minute main event. Rob Font arguably won 22 to 23 minutes of that fight, but Marlon Vera, outside of the first round, every single round, at the end of the round, he would find a shot that would just hurt Rob Font badly, whether it was a knee, whether it was a punch. I think it was in the 4th round, he hit him with a sweet chin music. Honestly, I thought Marlon Vera was going to KO Rob Font badly throughout the entire fight, but for some reason, Rob Font would just not go away. The fight before that, he fought Jose Aldo, lost to Jose Aldo back in December of 2021. Jose Aldo just landed the better shots, was the better grappler in this fight as well, was able to take Rob Font down, control him a bit, just landed the better shots on the feet, landed the more damaging shots on the feet, was just a more powerful fighter. Don't get me wrong though, Rob Font was competitive in that fight. He was landing shots on Aldo as well, he was busting Aldo up as well, he was just pumping that jab, which he's known for, and Jose Aldo was just too much for him. But those 2 losses aren't particularly bad. I mean, Marlon Vera is ranked towards the top of the division. Jose Aldo was ranked towards the top of the division before he decided to leave the UFC and go into boxing. And I don't think either one of these losses are particularly horrible. The fight before that was against Cody Garbrandt. And Cody Garbrandt, I know everyone knows his chin's completely gone, but this was the first time that we really saw Cody Garbrandt completely outclassed. And Rob Font just went out there and put on a jabbing clinic, was just lighting him up on the feet, beating him up, defending the takedowns for the most part. Garbrandt got some takedowns in this fight, but Font was able to get back to his feet, and he was just lighting him up on the feet with his hands. And then the fight before that, he TKO'd Marlon Moraes. That doesn't really mean much at this point in time. It hasn't aged well at all. He was one of the first guys, but Marlon Moraes' chin is completely gone. It's completely made of glass. So it doesn't really mean too much. And then the wins before that, even though they were a while ago, we're getting back to 2019 and 2018. I just wanted to mention them. Ricky Simone, which is a solid win. He's still ranked in the top 15. And Sergio Pettis, a champion over at Bellator. So a solid win there as well. And then the fight before that, he lost to Rafael Sunsao. But then we're getting back to 2018. That's really irrelevant at this point. So when I look at this matchup on paper, what I see is Yanez, who has nasty KO power, who's younger, faster, maybe a better striker. Maybe, though. We don't know that just yet. And I see Rob Font, who's aging, who's taken a lot of damage in his last 2 fights, and is susceptible to getting caught with power shots. And I think this could be one of those situations where the young perpetually eat the old in the UFC. We have 29-year-old Adrian Yanez on the come up versus 35-year-old Rob Font, who's on a 2-fight losing streak. And for me, my early prediction for this fight was Adrian Yanez by finish. And I definitely think Adrian Yanez can go out there and finish him. But Rob Font in his last 2 fights, I mean, he's taken so much damage. He's taken so many power shots. You know, I don't know if anybody can finish him at this point. You know, I know that sounds crazy. Eventually that chin has to go. And that's what had me kind of leaning Adrian Yanez by KO. And also, I feel like Rob Font, though, is such a big step up in competition for Yanez. It's hard for me not to pick Rob Font as well because Yanez hasn't fought someone the level of Rob Font. You know, I don't think Adrian Yanez, and at least at this point in his career, I don't think he would beat Jose Aldo. I don't think he would beat, you know, Marlon Chito Vera at this point in his career. And that's why this fight is so hard to pick, because you have one guy who's surging, one guy who's on a massive win streak versus a guy who's higher ranked, who has more experience, but is on a bit of the decline. But I went back and rewatched some of those fights. And when I watched Adrian Yanez versus Randy Costa, I decided right then and there, when I seen that first round, I have to go with Rob Font. My official prediction is Rob Font via decision. I think Rob Font is just the better striker. I can't forget what Adrian Yanez, what happened to him in that first round. Randy Costa was pumping the jab, beating him up. And then I went and looked at the more recent fights, even the fights that he won. Adrian Yanez just wasn't moving his head enough. He didn't have great footwork. He didn't have great head movement. He has great hands. He has good boxing. He has fast hands. But I just think Rob Font's striking is so good. And I also think that Rob Font is the more well-rounded fighter. We've seen him mix in the grappling in the past. We've seen him mix it in the Marlon Moraes fight. We've seen him mix it in the Marlon Vera fight. He wasn't super successful, but he was able just to mix it in and have his opponent thinking about something else. Yanez, we've never really seen his grappling too much, at least not against, good competition. And I think Rob Font, he's even mentioned he's going to go out there and mix in the grappling. I think he's more well-rounded. I think, Yanez is getting outstruck by Randy Costa. And then even in the Tony Kelly fight, he ate some shots in the Tony Kelly fight. He ate a lot of shots in the Davy Grant fight. And I just think Rob Font is a little bit better technically. He's going to pump that jab. Rob Font does a great job of pumping that jab and then following up with a nice combination afterwards, whether it's an uppercut or right hand. He mixes everything in so well and just throws 3 and 4 punch combinations. And I think in a 3-round fight, I think Rob Font is going to perform better in the earlier rounds when he's not really trying to conserve his energy for 5 rounds. His last 2 fights have been 5-round fights. So we know where his cardio's at. Yanez's cardio has looked good, but we haven't seen it, particularly tested at a super high pace. He's been able to get the finish time and time again. So I just think Rob Font's a little bit more experienced, a little bit more well-rounded. And I just don't trust the defensive boxing of Adrian Yanez because we just seen him eat too many shots. And Rob Font has a masterful jab. So I see this fight kind of going down. Rob Font pumping the jab, following up with an uppercut, landing some good shots, moving his feet well, moving his head well. And Yanez just kind of plotting forward, just hunting for that KO. And I don't think it's going to work for him. I think Yanez is going to be chopping the calf of Rob Font. But it's a 3-round fight. I don't think it's going to pay massive dividends for him in this fight. And Rob Font is very good at managing the range. He has a little bit of a reach advantage. And I just think he's a little bit more experienced. And I think this might be a little bit too soon for Adrian Yanez. I definitely think all that damage for Rob Font that he's taken in his last 2 fights, I think it may catch up to him. Yanez may go out there, just have the faster hands, clip him and put him away. But we've seen him survive against Marlon Vera. We saw him survive against Jose Aldo. I think he'll be able to survive against Adrian Yanez. I think he knows where his weaknesses are, and it's getting clipped with those big shots. And I think he's going to be a little bit more defensively sound. I think he's going to be a little less, careless in his striking. And I just don't see Yanez putting him away. And that's why I think Rob Font is going to get this done via, I'm going to say 29-28 decision win. I think maybe in one of the rounds, Rob Font gets clipped, and maybe it's close on the striking, and Yanez steals a round. But I think ultimately, Rob Font is going to win the decision, but it was tough to pick him. Watching him lose those fights to Marlon Vera and Jose Aldo, and especially in that 4th round against Marlon Vera, just watching him eat that sweet chin music. Honestly, at that point, he had been hurt so badly, I thought Marlon Vera was going to put him in a Boston Crab. That's how bad Rob Font was hurt. But he's not coming back particularly soon. He took a year off, or almost a year off. I think he's going to be refreshed. I think he's going to be hungry. I think he knows this is a must-win. And I think he's going to go out there and use his technical boxing ability and his defensive boxing as well to not get clipped. And I think Yanez is just going to have trouble finding the range. And I think he's going to get it outstruck to a decision. And I also think Rob Font is going to mix in the takedowns. And he might have a little bit of success there, but I don't think that's going to be his primary game plan. I just think he's going to mix it in to kind of get Yanez thinking about it. And if he gets him down and holds him down for 2 minutes, he's going to, help seal a round out for Rob Font. And I just think it's just a little bit too soon for Adrian Yanez to get this massive step up in competition. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Who are you picking, Rob Font or Adrian Yanez? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.